This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is sponsored by the Fire Store. Learn more about getting the gear you need at prices you can afford by visiting thefirestore.com.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Better Every Shift podcast. My name is Aaron Zamza. I'll be your host. I'm a fire officer up in Wisconsin. Today's episode, I'm going to jump right into it because it's one of the most important topics that is floating around with the fire service community, also within the realms of the police community, dispatchers. It's about mental health, and we're going to take a very unique approach today. We have two really extraordinary guests. We have Dr. James Lynch with us, and then we have Firefighter Paul Duran. And we're going to talk about mental health, PTSD, and how to combat it, how to treat it. We're blessed to have Paul here. He's going to talk to us a little bit about his own journey with this. And so I think we can see the science and the application to real life. And so for both you guys, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the program. And Doc, let me start with you. So Doc, Dr. James Lynch, you are in the Maryland area, but I think you practice all over the world. I think you had mentioned that you have clients that have probably sought you out because you are an expert in dealing with treating PTSD, and your experience comes from 31 years in servicing with the Army in Special Forces, I believe a lot of that was, and you're a board certified family medicine and sports medicine doctor. You've also one of the first to use SGB, and I'm going to have you explain what SGB is and give us a little background. I'm like, how did you even get to doing this stuff?
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for having me on. I think that a lot of the lessons that I learned from the military special operations community really apply to the fire service community. So this is just it's an effort to just try to raise awareness and get the word out of some experiences, some lessons that I learned working in my time in the military. And I think there's a lot of parallels with our cultures that I experienced. So I'm an expert in a procedure called stellate ganglion block, or SGB is just easier to say.
Much easier.
And it's a procedure that's been around for 100 years. It's an injection in the side of the neck, which always sounds just weird the first time you hear that. But this is a procedure that was been around since the 1920s, and it was used to treat pain way back then. And about 2010, 2011, while I was at Fort Bragg, there was a couple of us that started using this procedure to treat PTSD in special operators in the military. And it was used in kind of small pockets, and then it expanded as we researched it and published our research and continued to take care of elite operators, really. And I retired from the Army about 5 years ago and set up shop in Maryland, where I live in Annapolis. My clinic's right nearby. And this procedure has really grown to become a critical piece of treating post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic stress injury or symptoms of PTS and anxiety that affects really fairly normal, highly functioning elite people across a variety of settings. So it's a really applicable thing. I can explain more about the procedure, but that's the background. That's really why I'm here.
Yeah. Well, and the other side of this is we're going to talk to Firefighter Paul Duran, who has actually used this, and Paul, you have a great story. Real quick, you've been a volunteer for over a decade with the Bernie Fire Department, and then you recently moved to a full-time firefighter role. You're part of the department's peer support group, and I don't want to give too much of the backstory. I'd rather have you do that, but you've been working with Dr. Lynch to deal with some issues with PTSD, and so give me a little bit about your background, Paul, and kind of where and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. Yeah. I thank you guys for having me. It's a cool opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Lynch, for reaching out and giving me the chance. And I started my career a long time ago for a short stint, and couldn't get away from it. It's just really hard to stay away from this place. And there's a lot of wonderful people and stuff that I know, and so I got did a lot of other odd jobs. Had a family, did all these things, and as I started to have kids. started noticing a lot of these little things, and the what got me back in the fire service is just an opportunity. I own a business and I run a full-time business, and it was at a point where I was able to get back to doing what I love, and so I was able. It was an opportunity with the fire department here, and they're growing really fast. We got great chiefs, and so I stepped my foot in, and luckily enough, had really stiff competition, and I got selected to come on the department, and so I'm here doing what I love, as well as running a business and having a great family and stuff. And so, um, this a lot of stuff in the past, which we'll talk about, kind of
Yeah.
led up to this point, and lots of good things happening. But very thankful for Dr. Lynch and his team to have the opportunity I did.
Yeah, can we talk about that a little bit? Go into it a little bit about what were you experiencing, and how did you get to the point to seek out Dr. Lynch?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. When my wife and I were, newlyweds and into our younger relationship before we had kids, life was pretty easy. There's not a lot going on. We're still started a business, and it's all good. Then you have kids, and I'd already been doing the fire service thing for a little while, even as a volunteer. We stayed pretty busy and did stuff here at the department as we were growing into full-time positions, and started having kids, and just realized I figured it was just having kids, just always over worried about everything. And it was just kind of accepted, right? We lived life like that. My wife, was very young. We were both very young at the time, so it's how we just started that part of our life, and to us it was normal. And we got through our first child, my son, and then ended up having my daughter, and had a little bit, about a 2.5 year stint between our kids. uh, Continued to run into the business, and as I got older, a lot of the worrying and a lot of just the over anxiousness about my kids getting hurt and all that stuff, and being overprotective in a lot of ways, and over vigilant in vacations, and just started to become more prevalent as those little chips away, those little chips just kind of continue to chip away over time. And it came to a head recently, as I sought out, Dr. Lynch and everything here, and talked to my chief. But it just kind of snuck up on me over time, and
Yeah.
didn't realize it. And we had accepted it as normal, which is crazy to look back on, that it was just our life. My wife was like, yes, just, my husband's just like that. And it definitely poured over at some point, and realized it wasn't normal.
So it was more than just being a worry wart. Like I think we had mentioned in some of our conversations about catastrophizing.
Hmm.
And Dr. Lynch could probably evaluate or elaborate a little bit more on that. But like for us lay people, it's basically like you're seeing some of this trauma through the job and some of the negative things or the bad things that happen, and you kind of just started thinking that was going to happen to you and the family.
Yeah, and you don't. The things we see don't always directly translate to, like, this particular event is what's bothering me, or that call is bothering me. It's just funny, like, it just changes the way we see the world. And my wife sent me a really great video of my son last night, and her perspective on the world is so beautiful. And I think it's beautiful too, but the way we see it is so different because of the things we experience. And so, dealing with them riding a bike, or me leaving to work. I know we were talking about that before we
Yeah.
started.
Yeah. What was the driveway stuff? Like I
Yeah,
think people
so
can relate to that.
yeah, so when my son started to walk, it was something I was just always concerned about, his safety, of falling and stuff like that. But it's not simply just being concerned about him; it's seeing a fall, or seeing him bump his head, and going from 0 to 100 in the "what's wrong with him" scale. Instead of it just being a bump and a bruise, it's a, "oh my gosh, he fell down, like, off the bed." It could be a brain bleed. Like, you just go into this horrible side of, like, the worst that could possibly happen. And that's basically what the driveway thing started. I drove a big truck, and when he started to walk, in my head, I'm like, man, what if, he can reach the locks now? He can get outside.
Yeah.
Like, what if I drive back, like, and I don't see him? And what's worst about it is that not only am I, like, feeling that and, like, understanding it cognitively, I can see the after effects of that happening. And it's just easy. I could paint it on a wall when it was happening. I could
Wow.
easily put the picture up there. I could see all what it looks like. And I was talking to a gentleman who is essentially a counselor here for us, and when we hit that pinnacle and I was talking to him about it, he was like, "That's just so you know, it's not normal.
Yeah.
It's not normal to think like that." Um, and this was years. I mean, this was back when he was only a year and a half years old, and so to me, I've been seeing the world like that for so long. It just was like, I guess I'm just overly worried about my kids, like.
Right. So you're thinking, "Oh, I'm just a anxious worry wart." A counselor's saying that's not right. And so doc, let's transfer to you like this catastrophizing is it's a symptom, right? Explain to us kind of like what Paul was going through and I think you probably have seen hundreds, thousands of cases like this.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think it's interesting because Paul said something there that was really important, which is like it just kind of snuck up on you over time, and what most people consider just their regular experiences. And in the fire service community, you're like or not, you have a really stressful job. You're expected to be, the master of chaos when everybody else is losing their mind, and most are really good at it. So to do that, you actually have to suppress some kind of normal things that other people are afraid of, right? That's a big deal, and it's a very similar thing that we see that I served with in the special operations community for many years. And the people that gravitate towards those things are kind of wired a certain way to be able to excel in those areas. The thing is, and to get to the point about catastrophizing, is there are a lot of symptoms that are kind of these, hard to describe, vague things that might happen. And what I saw in my experience was people like Paul, high functioning, smart, young, healthy in every other way, coming into the clinic in my special operations unit. I was working at a special mission unit at Fort Bragg with very elite operators, and people don't come forward and say, you know what, I think I have PTSD. Like, that doesn't happen. What happens is people will come forward and they say, I'm having a problem with sleep. I'm having a problem with my concentration, and I'm having a problem with irritability. And a lot of that stuff bleeds into things that people use to treat themselves. Alcohol is probably the most common one, right? And if enough of your buddies and teammates are around you are all kind of experiencing the same thing, it just kind of seems normal.
Yeah.
And that becomes just part of the culture of, well, our job demands a lot of us. I know what I'm getting into, and this is just a byproduct of a career that I've chosen, and that's just how it is, which is interesting, right? Because it's
It's
an
like misery
admirable
loves
thing.
company, right? Like we're normal within the confines of our firehouse or our group, but
Yeah.
then when we get out into the real world, right? It's not like and I think Paul too, like was your wife one that kind of triggered you to say this isn't normal, but right? Like
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
we had a time, we had a moment that was pretty. It's important to talk about because it was kind of one of those off the ledge times where works out different for everybody, and luckily it was with my wife, and just having an extremely emotional, like not normal for me, just like off the edge mental, like emotional breakdown is really what it was. And luckily she was there, and she was a huge supporter of me in that time, and kind of let out all the feelings and all the stuff that I was frustrated with, and that were weighing on me. She listened, and she was like, you really need to go talk to somebody. Like, this isn't getting better, this is getting worse. Um and I said, worst case is go talk to your chief. Like, we've got great chiefs. And so she she's younger than me, she's less experienced in lots of ways, but she just has become kind of a rock for me, and she's so supportive. And so she pushed me, and I'm glad she did, and I'm glad I listened. I'm glad I wasn't the big, just brawny guy who's just like, no, I can handle it. And it's really important to be vulnerable, and it's hard for us to do that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The denial and Doc, you had mentioned too, well, any other way, right? Alcohol, sometimes comedy. But I think it's a good point too. And Paul, again, I appreciate your honesty because it affects our relationships, right, Doc? I mean,
Absolutely.
how did you get in? I think the real question then is, okay, you went through a process, right, to get to Dr. Lynch. What was the process like?
So It it was awesome. Like I'll tell you, it was so fast. I reached out to my chief. My chief and I had a great conversation. He was extremely supportive, and I think other departments need to hear that. I think that chiefs around the country, no matter what, need to take care of their guys and look at their guys this way, because to be in a leadership position where we're comfortable to walk into their office and have a hard conversation and be super vulnerable in an area we're not, first I'll hit on, is really important. But essentially within 48 hours, I had talked to him. He had referred me to another department member who had the block, who is in touch with the Troops First Foundation. I got in touch with those guys, and within 48 hours, I had appointments. I had a questionnaire from Dr. Lynch's office. I had answered everything and had essentially flights and hotels booked in less than an additional 24 hours after that.
Wow.
Troops First took care of the correspondence and getting things taken care of, and they covered it financially. And very thankful for them, because they allowed me to do something that I would not have been able to do, with family and just etc. So just that little communication, and we were there already.
Yeah. So then let's transfer to Doc. Now you kind of, you've heard Paul's story. Obviously you've been working together. And when Paul comes to you, kind of, can you take us a little bit through like what your process is then?
Yeah, I can. It's funny because I feel, we're talking about my specialty, this thing called stellate ganglion block, which sounds like kind of a mystery. Paul referred
Yeah.
to it as the block. And if you can see me on camera, it's essentially a needle in the side of the neck. What I would say is this is a procedure that can be extremely helpful. It's been around for a long time. It's not something I made up. It's a very safe procedure. It's been studied, and there's about 40 articles published in medical journals and stuff. So all that, but it's not necessarily like a magic wand or the silver bullet. And what I do when I look at someone to decide whether or not this would be helpful, the first thing that's important is diagnosis is not the most important thing, which is weird, right? Because you think doctor, like, got to have a diagnosis, you got to have a treatment. In this case, the symptoms that people feel are more important than the diagnosis. And without getting too technical about this, I've treated many people who don't really meet all of the criteria for PTSD, but they have a lot of the really bad symptoms of it, but might fall short of like one little tick mark on the diagnosis. And it turns out that actually doesn't matter. And there are a lot of people who benefit from a procedure called stellate ganglion block that the diagnosis part doesn't matter that much. And I'll explain why. But the things that it's really helpful for that we've studied over the years are things like sleep, concentration, anger, and irritability. And we've studied these things for many years. So these are symptoms, not diagnoses, that bubble to the top of things that can have really helpful results. And the reason is, it's probably worth describing like what the procedure is and what it does, because it addresses your body's fight or flight system. And people's fight or flight systems are there for a reason. Like, it's actually a really important part of what we call the lizard brain, right? Or the limbic system of the brain, which is like the most basic part of our brain that keeps us alive. It's actually what makes you really good as a firefighter or a special operator. And then in some things that you don't even think about, but for some people that are like CEOs or like these high-powered lawyers or whatever, some people who can excel with their fight or flight system, in an elevated state, can really do well. The problem is, till you try to relax at night with your kids or on the weekend, or your wife or your husband or whatever. And this is the problem, is that it's a double-edged sword. And that's why the symptoms that I look at matter. But the description that Paul mentioned is the thing I hear all the time, which is, I can keep it together pretty good in the team room, in the firehouse. Fine. I'm comfortable with that. In fact, I excel when there's chaos and danger. That's like my sweet spot. But chilling out on the weekend with maybe some strangers, or having to go out to meet new people or whatever, might put me over the edge, and I can't do it without a couple of drinks. Or if my kid spills something or drops something, I go 0 to 60 and lose my temper. Most people who experience those things, if you're a good person and you lose your mind at your kid for something very stupid, most everyone I know feels terrible about it, because you know it's wrong. But you also know you can't prevent it for some reason. And you know there's something weird. There's like a glitch in your temper or your response. It's super common. And what I find because I'm on the receiving end of these conversations, right? What I find is people tell me this. It's so common that many people aren't comfortable like sharing that with their buddies. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I just lost my mind last night at my kid, because it's embarrassing and there's shame and guilt associated with that. What it turns out is it's there for a reason, and it's because of the way our fight or flight system is designed and our amygdala in our brain. So there's like a really good biologic explanation for why we respond that way. And there's also a really good explanation for why we can get stuck in an elevated state like that. And that kind of explains why this procedure is so helpful.
Okay. Are you talking about sympathetic to parasympathetic, basically, right? Like we get stuck in the
Yeah.
sympathetic pathway system?
Yeah. And that's great. Yeah.
For all those that are listening, this is Zam that actually said that. So I know they're like, holy cow, that's a very large word for a firefighter. But yeah.
If I can describe it, this is the simplest way that I describe it, because I have like cartoon brain. So this is how I picture it in my mind.
Perfect for this
It's
show.
like you have the fight or flight system is your accelerator in your car, right? That's your gas pedal. And then you have the parasympathetic system, which is rest and digest. And they're actually governed by two nerves. They run right next to each other down the side of the neck on both sides. And it's like all of your body's autonomic or automatic systems all are regulated by two little cables on either side of your neck. And one's your gas pedal and one's your brake pedal. And that's parasympathetic, sympathetic balance. And many of you that are health conscious understand those things and know that an imbalance in too much sympathetic tone is a disaster. Now you happen to need it because when there's a fire or a medical emergency or something like that, that's when the pedal hits the metal and you have to be able to excel like that. And then what you're counting on is after the threat is gone, right after that period of time is gone, you expect your gas pedal to go right back to normal, or essentially your engine to go back down to idle, right? That would be the normal response. The thing is that it does not happen to everybody, and sometimes you end up higher and then idle, where your engine's kind of running hot like all the time.
Yeah.
Some people use words for like I'm a little high strung or I'm a little wound tight or whatever, but it's a really
They
common.
always say type A. I don't know why they say that, but yeah, right.
It's a really common thing, and there's an explanation for it, because your body has essentially learned that there are threats coming at me all the time, and I'm gonna, instead of going back to the total rest and digest and chill out on the couch, I'm gonna put myself in a state where I'm ready for the next threat. And what that looks like is like some dude resting his foot on your gas pedal all the time, maybe just pushing down a little bit at first, but maybe over years of repeated stressors starts to push down a little bit more, a little bit more. And then every now and then the dude just guns your gas pedal, and you go 0 to 60 for something you realize you shouldn't have. Like as soon as it happens, you think, well, that was stupid. I should not have responded that way. But somehow you can't control it and you can't stop it. And there's actually a reason for it. And the way we address it is with this thing called an SGB, which sounds like the dumbest thing of all time, but it's extremely effective in helping reset or redial your sympathetic tone back to where it needs to be. Get the foot off the gas pedal.
Yeah. And so, you summarized a lot right there, and I'm going to put it into my firefighter brain a little bit. Paul, you can help me with this a little too, because, right. So we're good in the sympathetic, right? We're in that state where we perform really highly there. And what we don't do is go back to the balance state, right? Where with the parasympathetic, and I think what happens is that then we all of a sudden are supposed to be living, in a more relaxed state. We get heightened quicker than, and then right, like then there's the guilty feeling, right, Paul? Like then it almost doubles kind of the stress in that case,
Yeah.
right? Did you experience that too, Paul?
Yeah, especially not being able to also control situations, being able to be in control of everything around you. Sometimes we create chaos in order to control it. And it's a backside of the brain thing, right? It's not something we're trying to do. It's just what we do. And because we're good at it. And it going on vacations, like I just didn't know how to relax. A couple of drinks helps me relax, and it shouldn't be that way, right?
Right.
But it was always normal, right? It was always normal. And a lot of my family's like, man, you just need to relax. And I'm like, I don't know how. I
Yeah.
literally don't know how to relax.
Right.
And the more when I first got on, we had, I don't know, 7 or 8 fatalities in the course of they nicknamed me the angel of death when I first got on.
Okay. Yeah.
We just had that section, and sometimes you'll have it like that. And that along with sleep deprivation and just the amount of calls that we run just kind of stacked up, and the effects at home are wild. When I was in it, I didn't think about it as much. And as I started to become more self-aware of the issue becoming a problem, it really, I look back and all of those things were things that I experienced in, especially his questionnaire, because this questionnaire, Dr. Lynch's questionnaire, really covers a lot of that. And I decided to answer those questions with my wife. And I wanted her to validate because she sees a different perspective, and a really organic perspective, versus we're always trying to just justify everything. And it was hard. It was an emotional thing to do because it's just really set in concrete. Like, man, like I really feel a lot of these things, and I didn't not want to believe it. I just didn't care to look into it. And
Yeah.
there's
Brushed over it, right? Nah.
it was very, very grounding,
Yeah.
to say the least, to just be like, I really need to do this. I really need to look into this seriously and take it seriously.
I thought that's a pretty unique kind of thing that you did, though. You had your wife answer the questions with you. Dr. Lynch. Is is that advisable? Number one, maybe he's onto something. Maybe that's a brilliant idea, is to give someone a questionnaire and then give someone that's close to them the questionnaire and see if they respond the same.
Yeah, that's interesting. Here's what I think. Something that Paul just said that really strikes home to me is, if someone gives you a questionnaire, and I was in the Army for a long time, so I feel like someone's always throwing some mental health tool at me, and I'll be honest here, right? Like, if I don't think anything's going to happen from that, I don't really care, right? And that's how a lot of us were just kind of like, well, what difference does it make? I'm not going to say I'm on edge all the time. Who cares? Number one, I sure as heck don't want to get pulled off my job. I
Yeah.
want to be told I have to take a knee. I want to stay on the team. So most of us who have been in that position, we don't want to answer those things honestly. And then I'm sorry to say it like that. I don't mean to imply that we are a culture of liars.
Oh no,
I'm not saying
you're hitting the nail on the head, Doc. I think a lot of us will
the-
go, yeah, we've been there, right, Paul? Like we
right.
can
And
relate
then
to that big
And
time.
I know
Yeah.
there's departments around the country where there's not a culture like we have here. The culture is very promoting of this in a good, positive way, and there's not
yeah.
always that. And so firefighters can be scared, along with teams guys, to say anything.
The Fire Store, equipping protectors with passion. Every decision we make as a company is about you, our customer. We wouldn't be where we are today without you, and we don't take that lightly. We understand that having the right gear can mean the difference between life and death. Our goal is to get you the gear you need, when you need it, at prices you can afford. Visit us at thefirestore.com for everything but the truck, and shop our family of brands, including Streamlight, MSA, Lion, Fleer, and more. Now let's get back to the show.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the key is, to me, this is the thing that the light bulb went off in my head is if people don't know what the outcome is, like if you think, well, I have these symptoms, but I think that's just part of the job and I can't do anything about it, then why would I cop to that, right? Why would I even say that? Or worse, if somebody's going to throw a bottle of pills at me, or they're going to make me go talk to someone and take my shoes off and make fists with my feet in the carpet, right? There's a lot of things that are like not what I would really want to do. And what we found is there was a special operations team who, prior to a deployment, everybody filled out their thing as mandatory type of thing. And nobody copped to their problems they were having except for their senior non-commissioned officer, who did and then got treated with this procedure, the stellate ganglion block. And his symptoms dramatically improved. And he went back and said, okay, guys, here's the deal. There's actually something here that could help. It's not a bottle of pills. It's not talking to someone for 6 months once a week, and it doesn't have to pull you off the team. Now answer these things correctly. And then we went back and reassessed the whole team. It was crazy. Everybody's scores went from like way down here, which was like totally normal, to way up here.
Oh,
But
wow.
the reason they changed, they didn't change. The reason they changed is because now there was actually a treatment or a solution, a partial solution at least, to something that could address the problem that wasn't something they knew about before. So to me, that's the whole thing. That's the awareness piece is, oh, there is actually a reason why I feel this way. There is actually a treatment that can be done for this. And it sounds weird. It's a stupid needle in the neck. But once I know that that's even the case, it changes everything in terms of, okay, I can honestly answer this questionnaire.
Yeah.
So that's what I see. And that's what I witnessed in my profession.
And I think it's really interesting that you said that, look, the SGB, it treats the symptoms, not necessarily, right? It's not going to get rid of your PTSD or your trauma. What it's helping you with is sleep, which we know can transfer into helping with the trauma, right? Dig into that a little bit more, because like you had said, this isn't just necessarily for everybody. There's other things that people should be doing also along with this, right? Like dig into that a little bit for me.
Yeah. If so, what this procedure is, really briefly, I'll give you the short version is, it's an injection. I use ultrasound to steer a needle into a nerve along the neck, and all we do is inject numbing medicine. It's the same thing the dentist uses for your tooth, or we use for an epidural for women in labor. Right? There's no happy juice or anything fancy, and all we're doing is numbing that nerve, the gas pedal, which is called the cervical sympathetic trunk. What that does is long-acting anesthesia puts the nerve to sleep just for 8 hours, then it wakes back up again. That's the whole thing. The procedure takes like 6 minutes, right? And I'm slow when I do it. It's not, doesn't hurt. It's in an office setting, like you're laying on a regular exam table, like a couch. And that simple thing, what it does is it turns off this circuit. And the circuit is one that, like, we're all familiar with. Everybody knows it because you know exactly what it feels like to go into full-on fight or flight mode. But what happens is the amygdala in the brain is connected to the body, and there's this massive network. It's like all these branches in the brain, and then it's a massive root network in the body. And somehow the signal has to get from your brain to your body when there's a threat, right? So it's a reflex. It's like a lightning bolt shoots from your brain to your body. That's how it gets there, and it travels along these two nerves. That's the biology of it, and it has to go into your entire body, like your heart, your lungs, your muscles, your sweat glands. It's everything that you feel. Like nobody has to tell you that. You know it when you're amped up. It's your entire body. Well, it's all connected to the brain, but the way we're designed, it's awesome because the networks, the two like tangled masses of nerves, they come together and they form like this one cable right in the side of the neck because they got to get between the brain and the body. So they all converge like this anatomic funnel. And if you were going to design a circuit breaker for that whole system, you would stick it right there in the neck. And by turning it off, you shut down the whole system. So just the same way, like when your phone is stuck or your computer's running slow, sometimes you need to reboot the whole thing. That's exactly what the stellate ganglion block does. It turns off that fight or flight network in your whole half of your body. So on one side of your body, turns it off, and then it resets it. The important part is when you hear the word block, sometimes people think it's permanent. The block wears off, but the reset has occurred, which is kind of like taking the foot off the gas pedal and allowing your engine to go back down to idle.
Yeah.
What it's
Almost like
not doing is,
retraining your body, right? This is what this should feel like, right?
yeah, and that's what people feel after the procedure. Just a few minutes later, and they may feel physical release, emotional, and then many people's brains or thoughts get very quiet afterwards as that resets. So the question, I gave you a long answer, Sam, I'm sorry, because it doesn't fix everything, because I think once your body gets back to the right state and your brain gets back to the right state, you got to do something to help it stay there. And that's where therapy is super important. Some doctors do this procedure and they don't really emphasize that. They just make it sound like it's a magic trick, like, oh yeah, I'll do that. But in my experience, if you don't take care of yourself and do good therapy afterwards, those symptoms might start to come back and might be 4 months or 6 months or a year later.
Yeah.
But if you do therapy and you help unlearn and retrain your brain a little bit, now that your system is no longer, what we say is, now that the fire alarm's not going off all the time. And that's not a fire service analogy. That's what we use, like, for everybody. We say you can't concentrate with that fire alarm going off all the time. You got to turn it off, and then you can proceed with really good therapy or other
and
techniques.
build your habits, right? Like build your like focus on sleep and nutrition, right? Like that's all part of that. Then once you get that reset, that'll help you, all those other elements that we talk about, right? Like the therapy comes in there, the limiting sugars, the hydration, the focus on sleep, right? Like, Paul, how did you feel after that first, like you hit that, like, did emotions come out? Were you just relaxed? Were you?
Yeah, that first the first one started on my right side, and yeah, it was like I have the analogy, and the best way to describe it in my picture book brain is that when basically my world was an office desk in the middle of a room, right? And on that desk, I have all my things: my life, relationship with God, my wife, my business, some fire service stuff, personal things, right? And that's where I manage everything mentally. And in that room, before I had the block, I felt like there was 100 people having 50 different conversations. and having to burying my head in my work and what's in my life was the only way that I could kind of escape that. And there are a lot of times where I look up to take a breath and I'm not really taking a breath. I'm just listening to more of the stuff in that room. And it's just better for me to get back into what I'm doing day to day. And that's what kept me straight. And then when I had those times to relax and come home and put my feet up, that's all it was chaos for me mentally, and basically like holding on too tight, just trying to keep it together at home and be what I needed to be for my kids. And the minute that I had the block, it was literally like everybody got up and left the room
Like to turn
immediately.
the knob down, right? Turn the
It
volume
was
knob down.
wild, yeah, and very emotional. Just had a release of calmness I have not felt in longer than I can imagine, or longer than I can remember. That's why I told my wife. I don't remember ever feeling like this. That's how long it's been, and how long I've just let it be okay. And it was wild. It's hard to describe.
So is that common? Like, doc, you hit it right on the head. Like I mean, is that what you
Yeah.
see most times when you do the procedure?
Yeah, it's a great. Look, I'll just say this: I got the best job in the world. I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but this is what I do, and I love it because there's a whole bunch of people who are struggling, trying really hard, and I sit in the room with everyone afterwards. So I've been doing this for 15 years. I've treated several thousand people. I hang out in the room afterwards, and I listen to people describe, like Paul just did, what they feel. There are some people who it's like somebody flipped a light switch, and they immediately go to a really nice calm state. I have people tell me they've never felt calm before like that in their life. Some people it takes a little longer, so not everybody's like that. It might take a few hours, even a few people maybe a couple days. But the procedure starts then. And the important thing that I tell everyone is the medicine that we use, the thing in the syringe, the ropivacaine, does not make you calm. It's a stupid anesthetic. There's nothing in it that makes you calm or tired or anything like that. So, and then most people, they say, "Are you sure?" Because I feel really calm right now. Like
Yeah,
I just
right.
shot you up with Valium or something, but I didn't. All the calmness comes because the fire alarm in the brain has stopped flogging your body. It shut off. It broke the circuit and allowed it to reset. And for many people, it blows them away because they go, "Oh," and I say, "Yeah, what you're feeling right now is not something I gave you. It's the result of something we took away. And what you're left with is like regular Paul is back now, right? Without that
Yeah.
stupid signal busting his butt all the time." So
Yeah.
that's a
It's
very common thing that Paul shared that I hear every day.
And I think too, and this is where your emphasis comes into now, you kind of have this clean slate, a little bit cleaner slate. It's what you're going
Yeah.
to put back in that painting, right? Now it comes back to those actions, right? And so, as part of your treatment, doctor, like, do you then say, "Hey, let's follow up with you need to start focusing on sleep. You need to do this," or and how many treatments do people typically get? And kind of talk us through after that first one, what happens?
Yeah, good point. So my clinic is in Maryland. It's right about 15 minutes from BWI Airport, and people fly in from all over the country. Most people have docs back home, or California, Texas, wherever, that manage them, and they have therapists back home. That's not my role, so I don't necessarily want to tinker with what other people are doing. They usually, not everybody, right? But some people have therapists and docs back home. So what I like to do is do the procedure, turning them back over to their
Sorry,
team.
guys.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
speaking of stress, like, right, Paul, you're in the firehouse. So now, like, now you've been reset. This is a great kind of thing, right, Doc? We're gonna watch how he responds to the tones. Take deep breath, right? But
It's
right,
calmer. It's definitely calmer for me. Like when I'm on scene, I can actually handle, like when we're at a cardiac arrest or something that's more stressful than a typical call.
yeah,
I can actually think a lot clearer. I can do a medication calculation. I can do a fine task better, because I'm not at 10. I'm at 7 or
yeah.
6 or
Or
8.
a controlled seven, right? Like,
Correct.
and I think that's kind of a cool thing that we're gonna use the tones as an example, right, Doc? Because it's not only helping you get more calm in the parasympathetic, but it also helps you perform better in the sympathetic, right? Just it totally encompasses, I think, almost like optimization, right? You said you're turning that knob down so you can clear your brain, and that you basically can retrain your body how to handle those situations more correctly, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and the reason is because you can be in an overamped state. And like anybody that's played ball or watched football, you see why's the guy drop the pass thrown right in his belly because he's over the performance curve. You're like too amped up, right? And that can happen to a lot of people. And you think you're awesome and you're doing everything great, but you're actually in a state where you're over aroused. And that's the point I think you just hit is we need the sympathetic nervous system to dial us up when we need to, but you can actually go too far, right? And then you're sloppy or you can't think straight and things like that. So what resetting the sympathetic nervous system does is allow it to go to a state where it's actually functioning properly. We did a study on this, and we did track people's things like concentration, reaction time, visual tracking, and things like that. Because we want to make sure it didn't affect people's ability to shoot, move, and communicate. You can imagine I'm taking care of special operators before we go to Afghanistan or Iraq. Like the last thing we want to do is jack up somebody's ability to respond to threats. That would be a terrible idea. So it took us years of really like demonstrating that and having a lot of experience to show, oh, I can actually think more clearly now. It's not deadening my ability to do it. So use the term optimization, Zam, and that's how I look at this. It's an optimizing thinking, feeling, and physical response. It's a kind of a performance thing that's addressing negative thoughts and emotions and feelings that occur from having the gas pedal jammed down too far.
Yeah. And Doc, you had mentioned something behind the scenes about relating special forces to firefighters, right? Like what you saw with a lot of your special forces. I call them athletes, right?
Yeah.
Um, and firefighters. And I think I want to emphasize that because I think some of us in the fire service are like, wow, we're not soldiers. We don't see what they see. We didn't go through what they did. Um, what I'm trying to do is just if you're listening to this, I'm going to give you permission to go seek help if you don't think you need it, right? And Paul, I mean, how important was that for you to understand it's okay for you to do it?
Changed my life. It's not because I was in tremendous denial. I just didn't care to look more into it. And I just thought that was normal. And you're around a bunch of guys that sometimes are in that same state. So it's just a normal environment to be in. And then we go home and sometimes it's, this stuff at home is normalized. Like this is just normal, like we're just having some issues or I'm struggling at home or whatever, or the kids are a lot. Those things, it opened my mind a lot, and being able to be vulnerable also, besides helping me personally through the block and through that journey, it helped me with my wife. I'm able to connect with my wife more. I'm able for her to understand a little bit of my world, which is a weird world for most people to step into. It's hard to understand. So it really opened up a lot more doors than I thought it would, including being an asset on the peer support team for people who want or are seeking help, who are really looking for it.
Yeah.
And it's changed my life for sure.
And and thanks again for showing your vulnerability. I think that's shows your strength. And for those that are listening, I mean, what's the final kind of message you want people to take from this and from your experiences?
I want people to look in the mirror and realize that you're not broken, and it's okay to like look at the things you're struggling with as we deserve better. Like we shouldn't, this isn't normal, and we shouldn't be okay with it being normal. And it's okay to speak up about it, and it's okay to be vulnerable at our kitchen table about it with the guys who we love the most and we want the best for them. It's okay to stand up at your department and talk to your chief about it, to look into programs and create something within your department that may be small, but it might save people's lives. I just don't be quiet about it, and it's okay to explore it privately and talk to people you trust. And the worst thing we can do is bottle it up and not talk about it,
Yeah.
and pretend like like we're okay, because it may not be this big massive thing that we're experiencing. It may not be the extreme side of this, but it will get there
Yeah.
if it goes untreated for a long period of time, and that's not good for anybody.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. And Doc, moving back to you, like, you had said the special forces and the relation back to the fire service, like it may be only one, two, three, four calls, right? That or even that one that sticks to us, right? But it still has that traumatic effect and can. And as Paul was saying, and I think there's thousands of hopefully listeners that are saying, yeah, it's probably affecting me a little bit differently than I think. And that's okay. And so, if you would, Doc, just kind of elaborate a little bit about that, about how you correlate the special forces with the fire service and why you're so passionate about helping us.
Yeah, yeah. For sure. I'm really passionate about helping people who are selfless, that put their community before themselves. And um, again, I'm a veteran and I served for a while. I'm passionate about helping people who put the country or the community first and before themselves and are willing to sacrifice. And it's not easy. It's a very admirable and a noble thing. I'm very proud of that. Both of my daughters are in the military. My wife was an Army wife for 28 years. So the service is very important to us. So that's really why I'm here. That's why I want to help the community. The thing that I think is funny that a lot of firefighters I talk to probably don't appreciate or realize is again, our cultures that I was raised in. I spent 20 plus years in the special operations community in a variety of units, and have multiple combat deployments. And we deploy and have high stress events happen, right? Rolling outside the wire. You don't have to get blown up to have the effect of stress. You don't have to see your buddy die next to you for that to happen. So sometimes people are dismissive and they'll say things like, well, I got a little TBI, bump on the head, but it's not like I got blown up on an IED, right? So there's always like this, well, somebody had it worse than me. And but the thing that I notice is, and then the same loyalty to your job and your mates, your buddies left and right of you, I think is such a parallel that I've seen and served with, which is I don't want to let my buddies down. I got a job to do. Yeah, it's hard. If it was easy, everybody would do it. That's why I'm doing it. I'm proud of a hard job I do. And I don't want to take a knee. I don't want to raise my hand, ask for help, and get shuttled off to, some office somewhere. That's not what I want to do. And that culture is fierce in the special operations culture. And I see it in the fire service as well. The thing that I think is interesting is like, you guys roll into the firehouse every day and you just don't know what's going to happen. Right. And then at the end of your shift, you're going back home. That part's different, right? So I deployed to Iraq a couple of times, Afghanistan, Syria, been to multiple places in Africa where I was in a dangerous area. And then when it was time to go, I packed up my stuff. I flew back home and I went home to mama and kids. And the threat was gone, right? But that's different from what you guys got the threat every day. Like you walk in there and you don't know what's going to happen. So I actually think it's different, and I don't want to say worse. That's not the right term, but the threat level is way more persistent with you guys, where it's there. It's like it's looming over you. It's not like you're afraid of it. Like you cherish it. You're like, that's my job. This is what I do. But it doesn't change the fact that the threat is sitting there, and in your brain, the amygdala is his whole purpose in life is to respond to threats. And that dude is looking, scanning. That's his job all day long. And when he does that, he's dialing up your sympathetic tone to be ready for the next threat. That's how it is. That's how we evolved. That's how we were designed.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but I say, give yourself credit. Like that is a tremendous occupational stressor to live under, and to expect that somehow it's not going to affect you, right? Like somehow you're Superman and that won't affect you. Some people are really good at managing that, and they have very good balanced and holistic lifestyles across all the areas. Other people aren't so good, and they find dysfunctional ways to treat it, like we've alluded to already. But it doesn't change the fact that all of you are facing those stressors all the time, and you don't have to get blown up to feel the effects of those.
Yeah. We're submerged in our own battlefields, right? Like
Yeah.
like you're saying, the soldiers, at least they know they're in a certain place. That's what their role is. But like Paul, you and I, we had a bad call at a gas station down the street. We drive by that gas station 14 times
Every
a
day.
day, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so Doc, I truly appreciate you saying that. And I'm hoping that's resonating with our listeners, that, hey, this is another reason why it's affecting us, is because when we go home, we're still reminded of this stuff because it's in our communities and it's surrounding us.
Yeah, and you're not weak or broken because of it. It's actually normal. Like that's what you're supposed to do. If you think about it, if that weren't the case, our fight or flight system would suck. It would be terrible if it wasn't the kind of thing that kept us ready for the next threat. And if you were like that, you would end up in the shallow end of the gene pool, right? Like it wouldn't be a functional way to be. So it's almost like your body's fight or flight system is working too well, when you find yourself in a state that's dialed up like that. It's just doing what it's supposed to do. And like Paul said, you're not broken. You're not, it's just, that's what happens. And not acknowledging it is just kind of, not doing right by your family and your buddies. Is you got to acknowledge that that's just part of how we're wired.
Yep. Well, I appreciate both of you guys, the insight. Doctor, thank you so much. And
Yeah.
Paul, brother, appreciate the just being humble and vulnerable and in front of, our listeners. And I'm hoping that it's gonna allow a lot of other people to kind of look in the mirror and take some steps to get better. And Doc, last message, like if someone's listening to this and they're having some trouble, kind of take us through we're gonna leave your contact information. But
Yeah.
suggestions, go seek some counselors. Like Paul, you went to your chief, EAP. You can even just start by evaluating what you're doing on your own health, right? But Doc, any final last message?
Yeah, well, I think if you're listening to this and it resonated at all, or just you wanted to learn more, I built my website to be like educational, and I have
Yes,
videos that
very educational.
explain the commonly asked questions that I get asked all the time, like what the heck is it? How's it work? I can't believe that I actually have videos on YouTube. I never thought that would happen, but I made them because people find them helpful. So my website is easy. It's just drjameslynch.com. And on it, there's a whole bunch of FAQ videos and questions, answers, stuff. It's not intended to be, it's just supposed to be helpful, right? And many people find those helpful. So if I said something and it sounded weird, like, all right, I want to dig into this a little bit more, fine. There's also a bunch of testimonials on there, plus all the medical research. So if you go see a therapist and they say something like SGB, I've never heard of that. Send them to the evidence page and they can read all the journal articles that have been written on this. And it might be just people aren't familiar with it. But that's what I would say. And then, Paul alluded to the fact that there are some benevolent organizations who are really committed to helping the firefighter community. And that was somebody that helped Paul come to Maryland to see me to be treated. I wish there were more. And if you know of other benevolent organizations that would be interested, I partner up with them and put them on our website. We're just trying to get the word out and make it simpler for people to come.
Like you said, if people have questions, that's a great place to look. I encourage people to go to Better Every Shift. Go to our website, obviously, and watch other episodes, watch this episode, but they can also email us at bettereveryshift@firerescue1.com. And if you want to get in touch with Paul, I'm sure Paul, you'd be happy to get
Yeah,
in touch with some of our listeners as well. And
absolutely.
we'll leave all this information on our show notes. And but most importantly, you guys, thank you so much, Doc, for your insights. I'm looking forward to many more conversations. And Paul, let's keep in touch, brother, because I love
Absolutely.
your story. I appreciate you sharing it. And I think hopefully there's some people right now looking in the mirror, trying to think about how they're doing, like how are they responding and what are they thinking? And I think it's an important thing. It's okay to be not okay.
It's not easy to do, but I always encourage all the guys in the fire service. Our job isn't easy anyway, and we're good at doing things that aren't easy. And so don't be disheartened because of that. Just drive forward, but do it not in a fire truck into a burning building. Do it in your mind. Do it into you deserve it. That's what I tell guys all the time. Like, we do so much for others. We always neglect ourselves, and you
Yes.
deserve it.
Yep. Very well said. It's the oxygen mask, right? I've been on an airplane. The oxygen mask comes on. We look around. Don't look around first. Put it on yourself, right?
Yep. Yeah.
The better you are, the better you serve.
I'd like to say thanks. I'm just Joe Citizen around the corner from the firehouse, and thanks. Seriously, I'm sure I know people say thanks on occasion, but for all of us who are on the receiving end of all of your selfless service and emergency responses, 24/7, 365. Thank you, and for me and my wife and my family.
No, well, we appreciate it. There's so many people behind the scenes that are really working to contribute to improving the health of our first responders. And Doc, you're one of those people. And I've heard some great stories. I've read some of your some stories about people you've helped, and obviously Paul is gracious enough to tell his story about it. And so it's people like both you, Paul, and you, Doc, that are helping make the fire service better. And that's what we're about. That's what we're about this podcast. So thank you guys for
Amen.
joining us. And thank you for helping our listeners learn something, do something, and share something, hopefully, to make themselves and those around them better every shift. Thanks for listening, everybody.